Minji walked through the Vakreen warship corridors with Jiwon's small hand held firmly in hers. 20 armed soldiers followed at a distance, weapons ready but not firing. Commander Threll walked beside them, his face a mixture of anger and confusion. He had radioed ahead ordering all personnel to stand down, but no one understood why. "You realize this is not over," Threll said quietly. "Admiral Kreth will not forget this humiliation." "I know," Minji replied, her voice gentle despite the situation. She looked down at Jiwon. "Are you tired?" The little girl nodded. Without hesitation, Minji picked her up, carrying her easily. Jiwon rested her head on Minji's shoulder, exhausted from fear and crying. "How did you know about the door?" Threll asked. "Those cells are designed to hold beings much stronger than humans. Strength is not always the answer, Commander. Your cells are designed to prevent someone from breaking the door by force. I did not break it. I convinced it to open by understanding how it works. Everything has weaknesses if you know where to look." They passed through a junction where maintenance crew members worked on exposed cables. Minji glanced at them, noting their positions and what systems they were accessing. Her eyes moved constantly, recording every detail, every corridor turn, every security panel. "You are memorizing the ship layout," Threll observed. "Am I? You are trained as a spy. I am trained to pay attention. There is a difference." They entered a lift that would take them to the docking bay where the transport ship waited. Inside the confined space, Threll finally asked the question that had been bothering him. "Why did you let us capture you?" Minji smiled slightly. "Did I let you? Or did you decide to capture me on your own?" "Do not play word games. Commander, let me ask you something. When you scanned all those refugees, what did you see?" "Unarmed civilians. No threats." "Exactly. You saw what you expected to see, and then you found one person who did not match your expectations. What did you do?" "We investigated the anomaly. You focused all your attention on me. You brought me to your ship. You put me in your detention level. You scanned me with your best technology. You had your science officer study me. You even contacted your admiral about me. For several hours, every important person on this ship has been thinking about me." Understanding slowly dawned on Threll's face. "You wanted to be captured. I wanted your attention focused on one person instead of 23 people. Do you know what your soldiers were not doing while they were busy scanning me? They were not thoroughly searching the transport ship. They were not questioning the other refugees. They were not discovering that some of those refugees are not refugees at all." The lift doors opened. They walked toward the docking bay, where the transport ship was still attached to the Vakreen warship. "Who are they?" Threll demanded. "That is not information I can share, but I can tell you this: they are people your empire would very much like to capture. People who know things you want to know, and they are about to leave your ship completely unharmed because you were too busy trying to figure out why your scanner could not classify me." Threll stopped walking. "I should detain all of them. You could try, but then you would have to explain to Admiral Kreth why you let them slip through your security in the first place. You would have to admit that a single unarmed woman distracted your entire command structure. That will not look good on your service record." Threll's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He knew she was right. They reached the docking bay. The transport ship's airlock was open, and through it Minji could see the refugees still sitting nervously in their seats. Doyun stood by the airlock, his face showing relief when he saw Minji and Jiwon. "Are they free to go?" Minji asked. Threll nodded curtly. "Admiral Kreth has ordered their release, but he also ordered that you specifically remain behind for further questioning. That is interesting because I specifically choose not to stay. You cannot just leave. We have questions about your intelligence operations, your training methods, your mission parameters." "Then you should have asked nicer. Maybe said please." Minji carried Jiwon through the airlock. The little girl immediately ran to her mother, who swept her up in a tight embrace, crying with relief. The other refugees stared at Minji with a mixture of awe and fear. Hyejin stood up slowly, her old bones creaking. She looked at Minji and smiled proudly. "Well done, student. You have not forgotten your lessons." "Teacher." Minji bowed her head respectfully. "Thank you for your guidance," Doyun approached cautiously. "What happened over there?" "A misunderstanding. It has been resolved." Sunho came forward, speaking quietly in Korean. "The fleet is in position. Taejin is waiting for your signal. Tell him the operation is complete. All targets are secure." "Targets?" Doyun asked, confused. Minji turned to face him. Sunho and Kyungmin sitting over there, both former intelligence officers. The Vakreen have been trying to capture them for months. This transport route passes through 3 different border checkpoints. We knew there was a high probability of inspection at one of them. So you came along to protect them? That was part of it. Kyungmin, a middle-aged man with graying hair, stood up. The other part was testing Vakreen response protocols. We needed to know how they handle situations that do not fit their standard procedures. Now we know. Their scanners are good, but they rely too heavily on technology. When technology fails, they panic. Doyen looked around at his passengers with new understanding. How many of you are actually refugees? All of us, Eugene said firmly. We lost our homes. We lost our families. We are fleeing war. That part is completely true. But some of us also served our government before retirement, and some of us still serve. Through the transport ship's windows, they could see the Vakreen warship beginning to disengage its docking clamps. On the bridge of that warship, Admiral Kreth was speaking with Commander Threll through a communication channel. Explain to me how a single human female escaped a maximum security detention cell, disabled 5 trained soldiers, compromised our power systems, and walked off this ship without a scratch, Kreth demanded. Admiral, she was not an ordinary civilian. The biological scans confirmed extensive combat training. But I do not think we fully understood what that meant. What could it possibly mean other than she is a soldier? Threll pulled up the files he had been reviewing. I accessed the human military database, the unclassified portions that are publicly available. There are references to special operations units, elite soldiers who train for years in techniques that are not dependent on technology. They call them different names. Some humans call them commandos. Others call them special forces. The Koreans specifically have a tradition of training that goes back thousands of years. So she is military. That is not surprising. No, Admiral. It is more than that. I found references to operators who are trained not just to fight but to think, to plan, to manipulate situations. They train their bodies to be weapons, yes, but they also train their minds to be weapons. They study psychology, engineering, tactics, languages. They learn to turn anything around them into an advantage. Kreth was silent for a moment. How many of these operators do the humans have? The information is classified, but there are hints in their public records. Not many. Perhaps a few hundred across all of Earth's military services. They are used for missions that require not just force but intelligence and adaptability. And we captured one by accident. Yes, Admiral. Or rather, she allowed herself to be captured so she could study our procedures, test our responses, and distract us from her actual mission. Which was, I believe she was protecting the other passengers. 2 of them are former intelligence officers who would have been valuable prisoners for us. Admiral Kreth's expression grew dark. So we were outsmarted. Yes, Admiral. By a single human female who weighs perhaps 50 kilograms. Yes, Admiral. There was a long pause. We need to revise our threat assessments for human personnel. Immediately. Back on the transport ship, Minji sat down in her original seat as the vessel prepared to detach from the Vakreen warship. Doyen returned to the cockpit to prepare for departure. The other refugees were quiet, processing what had happened. Jiwon came over and climbed into the seat next to Minji. Are you a superhero? Minji laughed softly. No, I'm just someone who practiced very hard for a very long time. What did you practice? Many things. Fighting, yes. But also thinking, planning, understanding people. The best way to win a fight is to not need to fight at all. But you did fight. You beat up those aliens. I stopped them from hurting people. That is different. I did not hurt them more than necessary. Why not? They were bad. They were not bad. They were scared and confused. Sometimes people make bad choices when they are scared. My job is to help them make better choices. Hyejin, listening to this conversation, spoke from across the aisle. You see, child? This is what I taught her. Strength without wisdom is dangerous. Wisdom without strength is useless. True power comes from knowing when to use your strength and when to hold it back. The transport ship shuddered as it detached from the Vakreen warship. Through the windows, they could see the human military fleet in the distance, maintaining their position but not approaching closer. The Vakreen fleet surrounded them. Dozens of massive warships bristling with weapons. Sunho checked his hidden communication device. Right now, I choose to be a cooperative prisoner. I suggest you help me maintain Admiral Kreth's hologram, filled the detention observation room, towering even in projected form. His scarred face showed decades of military service, and his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Commander Threll stood at attention, trying not to show his nervousness. "Explain this situation again," Admiral Kreth demanded. "You detained a single human female because a scanner malfunctioned?" "It is more complicated than that, Admiral. The scanner did not malfunction. It simply could not classify her properly, and now a human military fleet has arrived in the system, claiming they are here for refugee rescue operations. Let them rescue their refugees and send them away. We have no interest in starting problems with the humans. They are weak but numerous, and war with them would be annoying. Admiral, I believe this female may be military intelligence. She knows details about our ship classifications, and she has extensive combat training according to our biological scans." Kreth's expression grew more serious. "What kind of combat training?" "According to Science Officer Vrex, her neural pathways show training patterns that should take decades to develop. She is not a normal civilian. Then make her tell you what she knows about human military operations. Use whatever methods are necessary. The humans will complain through diplomatic channels, but they will not risk war over one agent." Threll hesitated. Something about Minji's calm confidence made him uneasy. "Admiral, she mentioned something called the Battle of Arcturus Station. Do we have any records of that?" "Search the database," Kreth ordered one of his assistants off-screen. After a moment, the assistant responded. "Admiral, there is a brief mention in captured Raider communications from 8 years ago. A raid on a human civilian station that went badly. The Raiders lost contact with their assault force. The humans claimed it was destroyed, but the Raiders believed their force simply disappeared." "How many Raiders?" "Approximately 4,000, Admiral, with full military equipment." "And the human defenders?" "The records are unclear. The humans claim only 6 defenders, but that is obviously propaganda." Minji's voice came through the cell's communication system. "It is not propaganda, Admiral. Would you like the names?" "I can give them to you. 3 are still alive. 1 is leading the fleet that just arrived in your system." Threll spun toward the observation window. "How are you hearing this?" "Your communication system is not as secure as you think," Minji replied calmly. "I've been listening to everything since you locked me in here." Kreth's hologram flickered with anger. "Impossible. That communication is encrypted with military-grade security. Your military grade is about 15 years behind current human standards. We have been quietly breaking your code since first contact. We just never mentioned it because, well, it seemed rude." Threll felt a cold sweat forming. If she was telling the truth, it meant every Vakreen communication could be compromised. "You are bluffing. Last week, your admiral sent a message to Commander Threll praising him for capturing 3 smuggler ships near the border. He specifically mentioned that Threll should be considered for promotion. You have not told anyone else about that message yet, Commander. You wanted to wait until the official announcement." Threll's blood went cold. That message had been highly encrypted, meant only for him. No one else should know about it. Admiral Kreth's expression became dangerous. "Commander Threll, this prisoner has become a security threat. Extract information from her immediately. I am authorizing you to use enhanced interrogation methods." "Admiral, perhaps we should negotiate with the human fleet first," Threll suggested, his unease growing. "No. The humans need to learn that we are not intimidated by their presence. Bring one of the other refugees to the detention level. Make the prisoner watch while we question them. That will break her calm facade." Threll wanted to argue, but orders were orders. "Which refugee, Admiral?" "One of the children. Children always produce the strongest emotional response." Minji's voice came through the speakers again, and this time, the calmness was gone. Her voice became cold, sharp as a blade. "Admiral Kreth, I strongly advise against that course of action. You do not give advice here, human. You are a prisoner. I am giving you a warning. Touch one of those children, and the situation will change very rapidly. You will not enjoy how it changes. Are you threatening us?" Kreth laughed. "You are locked in a cell, surrounded by soldiers, on a ship in the middle of my fleet. What can you possibly do? You should ask yourself a different question, Admiral. Why would I allow myself to be captured if I was actually worried about being captured?" Silence fell over the observation room. Even Kreth's hologram seemed to pause. Threll spoke quietly. "Admiral, perhaps she has a point." "Nonsense. She is trying to manipulate us through fear. Commander Threll, you have your orders. Bring the child." 15 minutes later, soldiers dragged young Jiwan into the detention level. The 10-year-old girl was crying. terrified by the massive aliens and the cold metal corridors. They brought her to stand in front of Minji's cell, where she could see through the transparent wall. Minji stood up for the first time since entering the cell. Her posture changed. The relaxed, calm presence disappeared, replaced by something coiled and ready. Her eyes locked onto Commander Threll. "Let her go," Minji said quietly. "Last chance." Threll pulled his sidearm, a plasma pistol that could burn through metal. He did not point it at G1 yet, but the threat was clear. "Tell us everything about human military intelligence operations. Tell us about your training, your mission objectives, your communication codes. No, tell us, or the child suffers." Minji looked at Jiwon, who was sobbing now. She spoke in Korean, her voice gentle. "Jiwona, close your eyes. Count to 10. Everything will be fine." The little girl squeezed her eyes shut and started counting through her tears. "Hana, Dul, Set, this is your last opportunity," Threll said, pressing the pistol against Jiwon's head. "Talk or she dies." Minji smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had been holding back and was now released. "Commander, do you remember what I said about context?" "What?" "I told you that threat potential depends on context. You have now created a context where I am no longer choosing to be a cooperative prisoner. You are still locked in a cell. Am I?" The lights went out. The entire detention level plunged into absolute darkness. In the observation room, Virex frantically tried to restore power. "Emergency systems are not responding. Something has shut down the entire power grid for this section." "How?" Krith's hologram demanded, flickering in and out as power fluctuated. "I don't know. It should be impossible to access our systems from inside a sealed cell." In the darkness of the detention level, the soldiers could hear movement. Fast, precise movement. The sound of metal bending, the soft thud of someone landing on the floor. A guard shouted in alarm, then went silent. Another guard fired his weapon blindly, the energy blast illuminating the corridor for just a moment. In that brief flash of light, they saw Minji moving between them like water flowing around rocks. She had somehow escaped the cell. The door that should have been impossible to open hung twisted on its hinges, the locking mechanism crushed from the inside. Another guard went down. Then another. No shots fired. No sounds of struggle. Just quiet, efficient movements in the dark. Jiwon kept counting, her eyes still squeezed shut. "Yodiel, Ilgup, Yodo." When the emergency lights finally activated 8 seconds later, the scene that greeted Commander Threll made his blood freeze. 5 guards lay on the floor unconscious but alive. Their weapons had been stripped and placed in a neat pile against the wall. Minji stood in front of G1, one hand gently placed on the child's shoulder. The other hand held what looked like a small piece of metal, torn from the cell door. "You can open your eyes now," Minji said softly in Korean. Ji-won opened her eyes and immediately hugged Minji's waist, still crying. Threll still held his pistol, but it was shaking in his hand. Minji looked at him calmly as if nothing unusual had happened. "How did you get out?" Threll whispered. "Your cell door uses a magnetic locking system. The magnets are strong, but metal is flexible. I bent the door frame enough to disrupt the magnetic field. Simple physics. That would require incredible strength. No. It requires leverage and knowing exactly where to apply pressure. I have been studying your door design since you put me in there. The hinges are the weak point, the guards. You disabled them in 8 seconds. I had to move quickly. I was worried one of them might accidentally hurt Ji-won in the confusion. None of them are seriously injured. They will wake up soon with headaches." Vrex's voice came through the speakers. "Commander, our power systems are still compromised. She did something to the main junction." "I disconnected 3 cables," Minji explained. "They are clearly marked if you know what to look for. I could see them through the ventilation grate in my cell. You should reconnect them before the backup systems drain your ship's reserve power." Admiral Kreth's hologram stabilized. He stared at Minji with an expression that mixed fear and rage. "You are surrounded by my entire ship. You have nowhere to go." "I do not need to go anywhere, Admiral. I need you to understand something important." Minji knelt down to Ji-won's level, wiping the girl's tears. "Are you okay?" Ji-won nodded. "Right now I choose to be a cooperative prisoner. I suggest you help me maintain." Commander Threll stood in the observation room, watching Minji through the transparent wall. She sat calmly on the bench, looking at nothing in particular, seemingly unbothered by her situation. Behind him, Science Officer Vrek studied the scanner data on a large display screen, his three-fingered hands moving quickly across the controls. "This makes no sense," Vrek muttered. "The scanner is functioning perfectly. I have run every diagnostic. There are no errors in the hardware or software." "Then explain the malfunction," Threll demanded. "That is the problem, Commander. It is not malfunctioning. The scanner is receiving data, but the data itself is contradictory. Look here." Vrex pointed to a series of graphs. "When the scanner analyzes her bone density, it reads as normal human baseline. But when it assesses her muscle response time, it reads as enhanced. When it checks for weapons, it finds none. But when it analyzes threat potential, it registers maximum danger. Every measurement contradicts another measurement." Threll studied the data, his expression darkening. "What does that mean?" "I don't know," Vrex admitted. "I have never seen biological readings like this. It is as if she is somehow averaging out what the scanner perceives. The device cannot decide what she is because she is multiple things simultaneously. That is impossible. According to our understanding, yes, but the data does not lie." Threll turned back to the observation window. Minji had not moved. She just sat there, patient and calm. It irritated him. Prisoners were supposed to be nervous, frightened, angry. They were not supposed to look comfortable. "I will question her directly," Threll said. "Perhaps she will reveal what technology she is using to fool our scanners." He entered the cell. Minji looked up at him and smiled slightly, the way someone might smile at an old acquaintance. "Hello, Commander," she said politely. "Nice ship. Military class, correct? Looks like a Draken 7 warship, maybe 15 years old. You've upgraded the weapon systems recently." Threll felt a chill run through him. How did she know that? "You will answer my questions, human." "What are you hiding?" "Nothing. I'm exactly what your scanner first said, an unarmed civilian. The scanner says undefined." "Then maybe your scanner is asking the wrong questions." Threll leaned forward, trying to intimidate her with his size. "We have ways of making you cooperate, I'm sure you do. But I'm also sure you won't use them. You are very confident for a prisoner." "I'm confident because I understand something you don't, Commander. You need me more than I need you." Threll laughed, a harsh sound. "You are alone on my ship, surrounded by my soldiers. What could you possibly have that I need?" "Information about whether I'm actually alone," Minji said, her smile growing slightly wider. Before Threll could respond, an alarm sounded. Brex's voice came through the communication system. "Commander, we have detected multiple ships entering the system. Long-range scanners identify them as human military vessels." Threll's eyes widened. He looked at Minji, who sat there looking unsurprised. "Interesting timing," she said casually. "You called them?" "Did I? When would I have done that?" "Your soldiers searched me. I have no communication device." Threll grabbed her by the front of her jacket, lifting her slightly off the bench. "What are you?" "Just someone who planned ahead," Minji replied, still calm despite being manhandled. "You should probably let me go now. Your grip is wrinkling my jacket." Threll released her and stepped back, speaking into his wrist communicator. "Bridge report. What is the status of those ships?" "They are maintaining distance, Commander. No aggressive action yet. They are broadcasting a diplomatic message, requesting to speak with our commanding officer." "What do they want?" "They are asking about the transport ship we stopped. They say they are conducting a rescue operation for refugees." Threll looked at Minji. "This is too convenient." "Is it? Maybe they were already nearby. Maybe they track all refugee ships in case something happens. You don't know very much about human procedures, do you, Commander?" It was true. The Vakreen had only encountered humans 20 years ago, and mostly dismissed them as a weak species, barely worth noticing. They had some trade agreements, some diplomatic contact, but not much else. Humans were new to space, primitive compared to most galactic species. "Tell me about Earth," Threll said, changing his approach. "Tell me where you are from." "Seoul. It's a city on the Korean peninsula. Very old, very crowded, very beautiful." "What did you do there?" "Many things. I studied history. I learned languages. I practiced martial arts. I worked for the government for a while." "What kind of work?" "Administrative tasks. Very boring." Threll did not believe her. "The scanner registered you as a potential threat. That does not match someone who does administrative work. Maybe your scanner is paranoid. You know how technology can be, always seeing threats where there are none." Vrex entered the cell carrying a more advanced scanning device. Commander, permission to conduct a biological scan? Threll nodded. Vrex approached Minji with the device, which looked like a metal ring on a handle. He slowly moved it around her body, watching the readings on a small screen. His expression changed from curiosity to confusion to something like fear. Well? Threll asked. Her nervous system, Vrex said slowly. It has been trained extensively. The neural pathways show patterns I have only seen in species that are naturally predatory. But humans are not natural predators at this level. What does that mean? Threll demanded. It means she has trained her body and mind to respond faster than normal. Much faster. The patterns suggest thousands of hours of combat training starting from childhood. Minji shrugged. I told you. I practiced martial arts. Not like this, Vrex said, backing away from her. This level of training creates reflexes that are not natural. You would have to train every day for years, decades even, to create these neural patterns. I had good teachers, Minji said simply. Back on the transport ship, Sunho sat near a small communication panel he had hidden under his seat. The device was basic, not strong enough to transmit far, but it could receive messages. He listened through an earpiece as the human military fleet communicated with the Vakrine warship. Doyun noticed and moved closer. What's happening? Diplomacy, Sunho whispered. But it won't last long. The commander leading our fleet is Taijin. He used to work with ghost operations. If they hurt Minji, he will respond. Ghost operations. What is that? Sunho looked at the pilot. You really don't know who she is, do you? She bought a ticket like everyone else. Said she was going to visit family in the outer colonies. She was protecting us, Sunho said. All of us. This entire transport was a target because we have 2 former intelligence officers among the refugees. We do? Me and Kyungmin. We worked for Human Intelligence Services before we retired. The Vakrine would love to capture us, question us about human military operations. Minji was assigned to make sure we got through safely. Doyun stared at him. Then why did she let them take her? Because it's safer for us if she's the only one they focus on. And because she knows exactly what she's doing. Hyejin, still sitting calmly nearby, spoke up. The young ones always underestimate small women. They see someone like Minji and think she is harmless. It is a useful advantage. You know her? Doyun asked. I trained her, Hyejin said quietly. Long ago, when she was just a girl who wanted to serve her country. I taught her that the best weapon is the one your enemy never sees coming. In the detention cell, Threll paced back and forth. I will ask you one more time. What are you hiding? Nothing, Commander. But let me ask you something. Do you know what happened at the Battle of Arcturus Station? Threll stopped pacing. What? It was a human conflict. About 8 years ago, a space station with 500 civilians was attacked by raiders. The station's security was overwhelmed. Everyone expected a massacre. I do not care about human history. You should. 6 human soldiers were on that station, traveling as passengers. When the raiders attacked, those 6 protected all 500 civilians for 3 days until help arrived. 6 against how many raiders? About 4,000. The raiders had ships, heavy weapons, combat armor. The 6 humans had whatever they could find on the station. Threll laughed. That is propaganda. Impossible. When the relief fleet arrived, they found 497 living civilians and 4 living soldiers. All 4,000 raiders were dead. I do not believe you. You don't have to. But you asked what I am. I am one of those who train people like those 6 soldiers. We are called ghosts because most people don't believe we exist. Threll felt cold despite himself. You are threatening me? No, Commander. I am explaining context. You scanned me looking for weapons. You found none. That is accurate. You scanned me looking for threat potential. Your scanner could not calculate it. That is also accurate. Why? Because I don't carry weapons. I am trained to use anything around me as a weapon, and because threat potential depends entirely on context. Right now, sitting in this cell, I am no threat to you at all. I am just a passenger waiting to be released. And if I don't release you? Minji's expression did not change, but something in her eyes grew cold. Then the context changes, Commander, and your scanner will finally understand why it couldn't classify me. It was trying to decide if I am a civilian or a weapon. The truth is simpler than that. What truth? I am whatever the situation requires me to be. 2 weeks had passed since the incident at the border checkpoint. The transport ship had safely delivered all refugees to their destination, a small colony on the edge of human space. But the encounter with Minji had sent ripples through the Vakreen Empire, reaching all the way to their High Council. In a massive council chamber on the Vakreen homeworld, Admiral Kreth stood before a semicircle of the Empire's most powerful leaders. Holographic displays showed footage from the detention level, freeze-framed at the moment Minji had escaped her cell. The images had been analyzed hundreds of times by military experts, and each analysis had produced more questions than answers. Elder Council member Zorth, ancient and scarred from centuries of service, studied the displays with narrowed eyes. You are telling us that this single human female compromised a military detention facility, disabled trained soldiers, and walked off your ship without suffering any injuries? Yes, Elder Zorth, Kreth replied, his voice steady despite his embarrassment. That is correct. Explain how this is possible. We are still trying to understand it fully. Our initial assessment was that she must have some kind of hidden technology or biological enhancement. But extensive analysis of the cell recordings shows nothing of the sort. She used pure physical technique and environmental awareness. Another council member, a younger Vakreen named Horth, leaned forward. You are saying she is simply well-trained? Not simply, council member. The level of training is unlike anything we have encountered. We have reviewed human historical records available to us. Humans have been fighting each other for their entire existence as a species. Over 10,000 years of continuous warfare, developing and refining combat techniques. Zorth made a dismissive gesture. Many species have long military histories. That does not explain this. With respect, Elder, it does. Most species, once they achieve spaceflight, reduce their focus on personal combat. They rely on technology, weapons, armor. Humans have continued to train in hand-to-hand combat, even as their technology advanced. They maintain ancient martial traditions alongside modern warfare. Kreth brought up another display showing Minji's neural scan. Look at these patterns. Our science officer Vrex identified them as trained neural pathways. According to human records, training like this begins in childhood and continues for decades. Some humans train their entire lives, perfecting techniques that are passed down through generations. Horth studied the scans. This is inefficient. Why spend years training the body when technology can enhance it instantly? That is what we thought, Kreth admitted. But we were wrong. Technology can be detected, disabled, countered. Training cannot. It becomes part of who they are. Zorth stood, walking closer to the holographic displays. Show me the moment she escaped the cell. Kreth replayed the footage in slow motion. The lights went out. In the darkness, enhanced imaging showed Minji moving to the cell door. She examined it carefully, running her hands over the frame and hinges. Then she positioned herself at a specific angle and applied pressure. The metal bent, not much, just a few millimeters, but it was enough to disrupt the magnetic lock. She calculated the exact point of weakness, Zorth observed. How? She was in the cell for over an hour before attempting escape. During that time, she was not simply waiting. She was studying. The door opened and closed several times when guards brought equipment in and out. Each time she watched. She listened. She learned how the mechanism worked. But the strength required to bend that frame, even at its weakest point, is within human capability, Kreth interrupted. Not easy and not for the average human, but possible for those who train specifically for it. Humans call it leverage, using body position and mechanical advantage to multiply force. She did not overpower the door. She outsmarted it. Another display showed the 8 seconds of darkness when Minji had disabled the guards. Even with enhanced sensors, the movement was difficult to track. She flowed between the guards, striking specific points on their bodies that caused temporary unconsciousness. These strike points, Zorth said. She knew exactly where to hit them. She studied Vakreen anatomy. We found evidence that she accessed our medical database through the cell's terminal. We thought the terminal was secure, but she found a way to read data without triggering security alerts. She spent 30 minutes reviewing Vakreen neural cluster locations and vulnerability points. Horth looked disturbed. She prepared to disable our guards while imprisoned, using our own information systems. Yes, and she did all of this while appearing calm and cooperative. Multiple psychological evaluations of the footage show no signs of stress or anxiety. She was completely in control the entire time. Zorth returned to his seat. Admiral Kreth, we need to understand the full scope of this problem. How many humans can do what this female did? We do not know exactly. Human military information is classified, but we have gathered some intelligence. They have special operations forces. Elite units with extensive training. The exact numbers are unknown, but estimates suggest a few hundred operators across all their military services. Only a few hundred? That is not a significant threat. Elder Zorth, with respect, you are thinking about this incorrectly. These are not regular soldiers. They are force multipliers. One operator like the female we encountered can accomplish missions that would normally require dozens of conventional troops. And they do it quietly, without alerting anyone. Kreth brought up new files on the displays. We have found references to human operations that seemed impossible. Small teams accomplishing objectives against overwhelming odds. The Battle of Arcturus Station that the prisoner mentioned is real. 6 humans did protect 500 civilians against 4,000 raiders. We accessed the raider survivors' reports. They described the human defenders as appearing and disappearing like ghosts, striking from unexpected angles, using the station's environment as weapons. Ghosts, Zorth repeated. Is that what humans call these operators? Some of them, yes. The female we encountered is apparently part of a program that produces operators with this level of capability. They are called different names depending on which human nation trains them. But the principle is the same. Maximum capability with minimum resources. Horth looked troubled. This changes our threat assessment significantly. If humans can train individuals to this level of effectiveness and we cannot reliably detect them. Exactly, Kreth said. Our scanners failed because we were looking for the wrong things. We expected weapons, enhancements, technology. The female had none of those. Her weapons were her knowledge, her training, and her ability to adapt. Those cannot be detected by scanners. Zorth was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. You believe we should reclassify humans as a high-threat species? I believe we should reclassify them as an unpredictable species. That is more dangerous than simply high-threat. Explain. A high-threat species is dangerous in known ways. You can prepare for them, develop countermeasures, predict their actions. An unpredictable species might be peaceful, might be dangerous, might be something else entirely depending on context. The female proved this. In the cell, she was cooperative and calm. No threat. When we threatened a child, she became extremely dangerous. When she escaped, she chose not to kill anyone despite clearly having the ability to do so. Kreth pulled up the final footage, showing Minji walking through the ship's corridors with Ji-won. Look at this. She's carrying a child while surrounded by armed guards. She shows no fear. She even talks casually with Commander Threll about the ship's design. This is not someone acting on instinct or following programmed responses. This is someone thinking several steps ahead, controlling the situation through psychology and presence. Horth leaned back in his seat. What do you recommend, Admiral? We need to establish new protocols for interactions with humans. First, never assume a human is harmless based on scanning technology alone. Second, never threaten human civilians, especially children. It triggers protective responses that can be extreme. Third, approach humans with the assumption that they are always gathering intelligence and planning contingencies. And fourth, when in doubt, choose diplomatic solutions over confrontational ones. Zorth nodded slowly. The Council will consider these recommendations. Is there anything else? Yes, Elder. I recommend we share this information with our allied species. If we encountered one of these human operators by accident, others might as well. Better that everyone understands what we are dealing with. Agreed. Prepare a full report for distribution. Zorth stood, indicating the meeting was ending. One more question, Admiral. If you encountered this female again, what would you do differently? Kreth thought carefully before answering. I would ask her what she wanted, and then I would try very hard to give it to her. Fighting someone like that is possible, but winning is not guaranteed and the cost would be high. Cooperation is simply smarter. On a neutral space station far from Vakreen space, Minji sat in a small cafe, drinking tea and reading news reports on a datapad. Across from her sat Taijin, the military officer who had led the rescue fleet. He was older than Minji, with gray starting to show in his hair, but his eyes were sharp and alert. The Vakreen have started distributing new threat assessment protocols about human personnel.